change the world. On we go.
Hello friends, welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name is Steph. This is my monthly Patreon video in which I make custom fan art in the form of a coloring page for something specific that was chosen either from what I read or watched or whatever the case is going on. And this month we're going to talk about Dungeon Meshi. I love Dungeon Meshi, aka Delicious in Dungeon, which is on Netflix. It's just so good. It's such a fun time. If you haven't watched Dungeon Meshi Delicious in Dungeon, it is a dungeon crawler anime. Definitely for a mature audience, but it's so funny. It's so funny, okay? So I'm going to give you a little context about what it's about and just some of my general thoughts about it. Currently, I think we're waiting for season 3. Is it season 2 or season 3? I don't remember, but I know there's at least 2 different openings. So we have a crew that consists of Laios, Marcel, Chilchuck, and Senshi. So originally, Laios, Marcel, and Chilchuck were in a larger group that was dungeon crawling and came into contact with a red dragon, which ultimately wiped out their group, and they reappeared. They had to go back to the surface. Laios' sister was eaten by the dragon, right? So once they got back to the surface, some people decided to stay, some people decided to leave, but Laios was like, I gotta go back and save my sister. And so Marcel and Chilchuck stayed with Laios to go back down into the dungeon to save the sister. The issue is that they don't have a lot of money, because they don't want to spend a lot of time trying to raise money to be able to fund their trip for supplies and food and whatever, because they gotta save her before she's digested. And apparently it takes dragons a little bit longer than usual to digest whatever they've eaten. We don't have time to do side quests. We got to get back down in the dungeon. How are we going to feed ourselves? And they meet Senshi in the very beginning along the way, who is very familiar with the dungeon and is like, listen, you can eat monsters. So Senshi goes with them and teaches them how to cook all of the different monsters that they end up coming into contact with and fighting along the way. And the meals actually look really good. If you haven't seen it, if you're a fan of Food Wars, if you're a foodie person, this show is for you. It's a comedy. It's so funny. If you're also a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to be a huge fan of this show. Caveat, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons, but my partner does. The closest experience that I have to it is Baldur's Gate. But if you're familiar with the fantasy genre, then a lot of this is going to make sense to you. So even if you've never played Dungeons and Dragons, that is okay. You will still enjoy this show. There's lots of magic. There's lots of monsters, right? We get the backstory of each of these characters, but I gotta say, Laos, different people say his name different ways. He is he's got a food kink, okay? This man, no matter what creature they fight, slime, slugs, mermaids, doesn't matter. He's like, how would this taste if we grill it, if we saute it, if we skewer it, if we marinate it? What can we do with this? Because I'm willing to eat it, right? And so Marcel is like, absolutely no, this is disgusting. I want my food. But they kind of don't have a choice because they got to be able to survive on their way down. So they have to be crafty about it. And it's just so cool the way that they come into contact with different creatures that kind of make sense for the ingredients that they're gonna use, right? I feel almost a mandrake is kind of like bok choy in a way, or some sort of root vegetable, but it's really funny to see how they have to interact with the creatures to make sure that they can get them safely, to eat them safely. And then also Marcel is like, listen, we need to draw a line somewhere. There's some creatures that are a little bit more humanoid. I think mermaids, right? And Marcel's like, listen, I don't feel comfortable eating this. We're not even going to go into the gray area that is eating things that are potentially closer to humans. And Laos is like, all right, I guess. He's like, his food kink knows no bounds. He is the autistic king, and I love him so much. This man, if you haven't seen all the memes going around online about Laos being just the autistic bae, himbo, no thoughts, head empty. I mean, like, he's not entirely a himbo. He does have a little bit of strategy in him. What is he supposed to be? Is he supposed to be a paladin? I think he's supposed to be a paladin. But anyway, it's hilarious. Marcel is a magic user who's gone to magic school and also has like a history with Fallen, which is the name of Laos's sister. Listen, in my head, I ship these two. In my head, they are lesbians. And if the show takes it in any other direction other than Marcel and Fallen being lesbian, I will denounce it. I will say you are wrong. It's okay to be wrong. But you know what? We're just going to pull a Lost. Because just like the fan base overtook the ending of Lost and was like, I know what you say you did, but that's not what you did. I will not accept anything less than a lesbian ship between the two of them. So it's whatever at this point. But I just love their relationships so much. Chilchuk is a half-foot rogue or something like that? So he's the thief of the group, the one who takes care of all of the traps, and then Senshi is a barbarian. The deeper that they get into the dungeon, the more kind of like story arc we start to get where things get more complicated. It gets pretty dark at a certain point, which is fantastic. There's like this king situation in which they're trying to figure out if they can like save the king. There's someone controlling the dragon. It's like it very quickly becomes evident that it's not just going to be about them fighting this dragon, that it's not going to be that easy, that there are going to be other people along the way that they're going to come into contact with, which might either like help or hinder their cause, previous teammates that they have some sort of beef with. We have some kind of nod to different cultural aspects in fantasy genre where it's like you have, I think it's the orcs that have been pushed underground, and that have experienced oppression and racism, and we have like magical racism because we have the high elves that are starting to come into play, and I don't know where that's going to go into a later season, but like there is all of this kind of pull from various high fantasy. So again, if you're familiar with those things, you will recognize the nod to all of that there. And something about this group that we're following is that they're quickly gaining this kind of notoriety for like being the group that has like gone the farthest, the one that's kind of weird because they're eating all of these things, and because of how deep that they've gone and how much they're really getting into what the deeper lore is of this dungeon, that they're awakening things along the way which they were not intending to awaken, and finding clues to a bigger issue with this dungeon. So they're getting this kind of notoriety, and there's people that are after them, and there's people that are trying to help them. There's friends who have gone back to the surface, but they won't need to get in contact with them to see if they can be of like any assistance. Also, there's the Dark Mage, who is kind of like the arch villain of the show. There's this other character that's kind of a cat that has come into the show, and the reason I can't even remember their name is because I'm actually not a fan of them. I'm a really big fan of the original quartet. I don't think that we needed to add some fresh blood to this. I think it was enough that we had all these different characters that they've made friends and contacts along the way, but we have this other character who's more picky than Marcel in regards to the food. So I guess it's like a little bit of a challenge for Senshi, kind of, to be able to cook these various meals, or like to be able to just like accommodate their food taste. But I get that a lot of people are just really fans of cats, because I'm a fan of cats, but I don't know that this character necessarily is doing anything for me. They're on a quest to be able to figure out if they can like be uncatted. I think there's like a curse on them or something, and they're hoping that if they travel with them that they can figure out how to get out of this curse or whatever. Senshi is everything to me, okay? I love him so much. He's so cute. His backstory honestly made me really emotional. I'm not gonna spoil it, but just like why he became the one who knows how to survive in the dungeon, because it's not really answered in the beginning. It's kind of just taken at face value, like, oh, here's like a really weird person who might have a similar kink to Laios. Like, sure, okay. But it actually goes a little bit deeper than that. And his obsession with bread, his obsession with ingredients, like he's the hyperfixation on bread. I love him so much. But we start to get a little bit of everyone's backstory. At this point where we're at, we haven't really gotten Chilchuk's backstory yet too much. We just know that he is older than he looks and that he has a family, and it's like, when am I gonna find out more about this? What has motivated you, Chilchuk, to go on this quest and be away from your family? Like, something that I think is also worth noting is that food is really important to the story, especially because of the various magic users in this, because the food replenishes their mana. So it's not just kind of like this arbitrary thing where it's like, hey, let's go on a dungeon crawl and let's just see what we can eat. Everything has a purpose, and I really like the way that the author has kind of just weaved everything in together. I don't feel like there's necessarily been any episodes that have just felt like filler episodes, so that's been kind of refreshing. Anyway, those are just some random thoughts about Dungeon Meshi. I'm super excited for the next season to come out, and if you'd like to download this coloring page, feel free to join my Patreon, which is linked below. I post videos whenever I feel like it. Thanks for watching. Bye!